Welcome to the Scottish Rite Journal podcast, an audio excerpt of the Scottish Rite Journal. This week's article titled, The Conundrum of the Cabletow, by Brother Michael Lee, 32nd degree, and comes from the September-October 2014 issue of the Scottish Rite Journal. Well, the cabletow is obviously one of the most visual symbols associated with Masons and the Masonic initiation, and one of the very few that a new candidate experiences before he's obligated as an entered apprentice. Now, despite being used in all three Blue Lodge degrees, the origin and symbolism of the cabletow has eluded explanation. As a matter of fact, there's even debate on whether it's really a symbol at all. Now, Albert G. Mackey's An Encyclopedia of Freemasonry explains, in its first inception, the cabletow seems to have been used only as a physical means of controlling the candidate, and such an interpretation is still given in the entered apprentice's degree. Well, Mackey goes on to give more modern explanation of the cabletow's second and third degree symbolism. But in the second and third degrees, he says, a more modern symbolism has been introduced, and the cabletow is, in these grades, supposed to symbolize the covenant of which all Masons are tied, thus reminding us of the passage in Hosea 11:4, I drew them with cords of a man, with bands of love. Well, since Mackey, there have been many romanticized explanations of the cabletow, and here are a few of those examples. The cabletow represents a spiritual umbilicus between brother and the lodge, much like a mother to a newborn child. The cabletow makes its first appearance in 1 Kings 20:31. Let us pray, I pray thee put sackcloth on our loins, and ropes upon our heads, and go out to the king of Israel. Or all men wear a cabletow that has been put on them by society, but to Freemasons the cabletow, which binds him to the social and moral order, and which holds him to his duty, has passed inward, and become a mystical thing of the spirit. A cable's tow length, which also appears in Mackey's encyclopedia, is attributed to Johann Christian Giedic, postulates a specific distance, 3 miles, for an entered apprentice, wherein a brother should attend lodge if in session. Well, there's strong evidence to suggest that the cabletow was actually inspired by an ancient Israelite temple practice. That's where the high priest of Israel would wear a rope around his body when entering the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. The remainder of this article explores this idea. Now, the Holy of Holies, or in Latin Sanctum Sanctorum, was the highest and most central room in both versions of King Solomon's temple. First completed in 957 B.C., then destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 B.C., it was rebuilt again in 515 B.C., and then destroyed by the Romans in A.D. 70.6, and to the ancient Israelites, however, it was more than just a room, the Holy of Holies, which was the resting place of the Ark of the Covenant, and existed in mobile form as the tabernacle in the wilderness. It was the heart or center of the world, the central linking point between the earthly and heavenly realms and the physical dwelling place of Yahweh. Now, Masonic ritual can give the false impression that the Holy of Holies was a central gathering place in the temple, presumably with Solomon himself presiding over meetings. But only one man was allowed to enter the Holy of Holies, and only on one day of the year, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. On this day, the high priest of Israel would enter the sacred room in order to ask the God of the Israelites to cleanse the people of their sins. Now, it's believed that if the high priest failed in his sacred mission, or if he was not properly prepared in accordance with the instructions given in Exodus 28:31-35, then he would be struck dead. Now, in this event, the prohibition on nobody entering the Holy of Holies would still stand. Tradition holds that in order to remove the priest's body in the event of death, a rope or golden chain was tied around him, some say around his ankle, before he entered the Holy of Holies. Now, there's some scholarly debate on whether the rope story was a real practice in ancient Israel. Supporters will often quote Exodus 28:31-35 as proof, but in no translation does it describe a rope being tied around the high priest's body. This oft-quoted mix-up is probably due to the similarity between the words rope and robe, which appears several times in the passage. Now, Dr. W.E. Nunnally, professor of early Judaism and Christian origins, Evangel University, does not believe the rope story to be true. He says the rope on the high priest's legend is just that, a legend. It has obscure meanings and beginnings in the Middle Ages and keeps getting repeated. It cannot be found anywhere in the Bible, the Apocrypha, the Dead Sea Scrolls, Josephus, the Pseudepigrapha, the Talmud, Mishnah, or any other Jewish source. It's just not there. However, Dr. Nunnally probably omits this because it is a much later source. Now, the story of the rope is mentioned twice in the Sefer HaNoar, Book of Splendor, the 13th century work of esoteric Jewish mysticism, which itself is one of the foundational works of Kabbalah, a spiritual system familiar to all Scottish Rite Masons. It says Rav Yitzchok said one rope was tied to the Kohen or priest's leg when he went in, so that, should he die there, they could pull him out. It is important to understand the rope story does not have to be factually accurate to be the ancestor of the Masonic Cabletow. The influence of the Kabbalah on Freemasonry and, in turn, the Zohar's influence on Kabbalah make a connection likely. Furthermore, Dr. Nunnally even states that by the Middle Ages, rumors of the rope story were already in circulation. The early practitioners of speculative masonry, who did not limit their sources to the confines of the Bible, would have been well aware of this legend and incorporated it into early Masonic ritual. The Scottish Rite would later make a great use of the Kabbalah in its own system of instruction, symbolism. Now, in many ways, Mackey's original explanation of the Cabletow as a control device is somewhat accurate, just incomplete. Freemasons traditionally seek light. They're seeking to pass into realms of understanding beyond that of unenlightened men. They're seeking the symbolic Holy of Holies, the one true source of light on earth, and to stand in the presence of the Supreme Architect of the universe. The Cabletow is their physical link to our world. Now, if they are found unworthy or if they object to the ceremony of initiation, then they are pulled back from the light, much like the high priest's body would have been if he failed in his sacred mission. Now, as always, any citations for this article can be found in the corresponding print edition of the Scottish Rite Journal. The Scottish Rite Journal is published by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, Mother Supreme Council of the World. S. Brent Morris, 33rd Degree, Editor-in-Chief. And please don't forget to download the Scottish Rite Journal app for your smartphone and tablet. It's absolutely free in your app store and available to anyone. I'm your host, Bob Chase, 33rd Degree. Thanks for listening.